Hi, and welcome back to the Property Side Hustle podcast, the show where we talk about all things property, investing, education, and mindset, and we cut out all the BS you normally get on property podcasts from the gurus. Now, we're not going to spend any time talking about where to find investors. That's a whole other episode. In fact, it's episode 74, which was last week's podcast. Today, we're going to focus on the structure of how you can leverage other people's money, OPM, to supercharge your flipping game. We're talking about using loan agreements to fund your flips, offering a fixed return to investors and keeping full control of projects to yourself. It's also how you can get started doing your own deals, but with very little money involved from yourself. But before we get into today's episode, just a quick heads up. If you want property education and you don't want to pay silly money for courses, go and visit psnpropertyblog.com. We've got free training, affordable courses, and mentorship all on offer to help you get started in property. So go and check it out at psnpropertyblog.com, and I'll pop the link in the show notes. Now let's paint a picture. You've found an amazing deal. You've crunched the numbers, you've analysed the potential, and you know it's a great project. It's got loads of potential. And you just need the money to make it happen. Now you could go down the traditional mortgage route, but that's going to be slow, restrictive, because you can't use mortgages to do property flips. Or you could actually do something else. You could leverage the power of private investment from other people. And this is where you find somebody else to fund the deal that you want to do by way of a loan agreement between you and the other person. Remember, we're focusing on the process today on this episode, not the finding of investors. If you want to do that, go and look at the previous episode. So let's assume that you've already found a potential investor already. We're already at that point. You've got a deal, or you think you've found something that's a great project. You'd love to do it. You don't have the funds, and we've found an investor. That's where we're at. So what do you do next? Well, you approach the investor with what we call a pitch deck. Now, a pitch deck is just a brochure that sells you and the property project. That's it in a nutshell. That's what a pitch deck is. And this isn't just a basic email that you send out to somebody, or a one-page document with some numbers and figures that you've thrown together. No, a pitch deck, it's a full-on professional presentation that screams credibility. So let's talk about what your investor pitch deck should include if you want to fund that deal you've just found. So some people think straight away about your experience or lack thereof and how you can overcome that. At the end of the day, be honest. If you're new, highlight your research skills, the knowledge that you do have, your commitment to learning, and any mentorship that you're receiving. Like some of my mentees on Property Basecamp who are currently smashing it out the park doing these things, pulling in around £60,000 profit per flip. And they're using this exact strategy of funding deals using other people's money. And sometimes with very little money down, and sometimes with zero money down as well. Another thing that people might think about is the deal's breakdown. So on that pitch deck, we're going to need the breakdown. So show the investor the numbers. Show them the figures, the purchase price, the renovation cost, the projected sales price, the profit margin, and all the acquisition costs and the holding cost during the refurb, plus the legals and any professional costs you might have had to spend money on as well. Transparency is key. So you need all the costs in there, and they all need to be accounted for. Another thing you want on the pitch deck is the strategy. So clearly outline your idea or plan with the property. If it's a flip, Tell them it's a flip. What improvements are you going to make? What value will you hope to add by carrying out the refurb? Use only sold comparables of similar properties, similar square footage, ideally on the same street, ideally a carbon copy of the property that you're looking at. Sold comparables are the only thing that you can rely on to back up that end valuation. Next up, we've got the returns. This is the juicy bit. This is the magic. You're offering a fixed return, typically around 10 to 12%, sometimes up to 15% on their investment. Now, this is a secure, predictable return, far better than many traditional investments. So if your investor they have money sat in the bank, that's not earning anywhere near 10%, 12%, 15% in a year. So you offering to find or presenting them opportunities like this where they can get really, really good return on investment, it's going to be interesting to them. So the investor's security usually comes in the form of either a first charge or a personal guarantee, and the fact that your loan agreement will state that you will pay them back first when the property sells as well. Now, obviously, they are first in line when it comes to sharing out the proceeds and profits from the flip, and I'm afraid, you are last to get paid, but it's not a problem as long as the profit is what you thought the profit was going to be. And we'll get into that a bit later. Another thing you want in this pitch deck is a kind of section where we've got, do you want to invest? Here's how it works. This is where you're going to lay out the process. So they lend you the funds, either the full amount or a portion of what you're looking for, through a formal loan agreement. Now, once the property is renovated and sold, you repay the loan plus the agreed upon interest that you've already said you were going to give the investor. It's simple, it's straightforward, and it's very, very common. This happens day in, day out in property. Now, why would an investor choose to do this? Well, it's hands-free, for one, hassle-free, and it's a way to earn a solid return. They are not going to get 10% or 15% returns in any bank in the UK. It just won't happen. And also, they don't have to worry about managing the project, dealing with contractors and the day-to-day headaches. That's going to be your job. They simply provide the money and they get a return on that money for doing so. And for you, the flipper, in this case, it's a game changer. You get to control the project yourself and you reap the majority of the profits. And you get to build your track record. It's a win-win. And you get to jump on into the next one, and so on and so on. And this is why I say to people all the time, you not having money does not mean you cannot do anything in property. It means you need to be clever. You need to use what you do have. And if you see a property deal that you know is an absolute winner, then go and fund it. Find those funds elsewhere using other people's money and get that flip done. But here's the crucial part that tips things in your favor with your pitch deck. Credibility. You need to build trust, and this is where your pitch deck can really shine. So include things like, if you can, case studies. So if you've done previous flips, showcase them, before and after photos, highlight the financial results and the lessons learned from previous projects that you've done. You could even use your own refurb on your own house if you've not done anything else, but you have done a refurb on your property. Before and after photos, very, very powerful. Testimonials is another thing. If you've worked with investors before, ask them for testimonials. Social proof is powerful because if you've got other investors saying, hey, this person is trustworthy, this person was great to work with, they did what they said, I got my money, I'm happy. That is huge. That builds a lot of trust. And it shows you've already been there and done it. And this is a case of you just repeating that process. So it's really, really important that if you have done anything before, you do go and get those testimonials. Next up, financial results. Show the real numbers. Don't exaggerate. This is what a lot of people do in property. They exaggerate numbers. They make things look better on paper than they actually are. Be transparent. Show a best case scenario, but show a worst case scenario, and always factor in things like a contingency fund so you have that wriggle room for the unforeseen costs as well. Next up, professionalism. A well-crafted pitch deck with clear communication and a solid understanding of the numbers is going to go a long, long way in building trust. It needs to make sense. I've seen some pitch decks in my time and they've been dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. There's just a load of information that you do not need, and you're trying to make sense of what's in front of you. Keep it concise. Keep it focused on what the project is, what the opportunity is, what the potential returns are, what the risks are. Back it up with data. That's all you need to do. Now, Alex is just one of my many mentees, for example, and he's built a reputation for delivering on his promises. He's meticulous in his analysis, he's transparent in his communication, and consistently he delivers strong returns for his investors. And this is why he's able to secure funding for his new projects. And he's also recently let potential investors, I noticed this weekend, just go and visit his current refurb project as it's nearing completion. And it looks amazing. The before and after photos were fantastic. And he invited investors to an open day so he could talk them through what he's done on that project. And that's a great move. It really shows potential investors what's possible. And again, it's such a good opportunity to meet and network with new people who may well invest next time round. So if you're serious about scaling your flipping business, consider the investor loan strategy, where you lend money from an investor to allow you to do the project. It's a powerful way to leverage other people's money, to build your track record and achieve your property goals. So just remember, professionalism and a solid pitch deck, it's got to be good. They're going to be absolutely essential to you funding your deals with other people's money. So some exciting news. I currently have some places open and available at the moment to mentor people. Doing things just like this, like what we're talking about on this podcast. I'm helping people hit 6-figure incomes doing this and beyond. So if you'd like to get into property and you want that safety net of having a mentor that's got your back, then I support my mentees ongoing. It's not a 6-month thing or a 12-month thing. You join Property Basecamp and you get my support ongoing for as long as you need it. Plus, a whole bunch of other bonuses, such as access to online courses teaching you several income-producing property strategies. Now, like I said, I've only got a few places open, as it's all very much one-to-one support and monthly one-to-one video calls. And it's first come, first served. So check the link in the show notes or go and visit psnpropertyblog.com and click on mentorship. So back with it. So some key questions that people often ask me when they think about investing and using other people's money in this way. People often ask, who owns the property? Well, you own the property 100%. This is not a JV or a joint venture. Remember, you are using the investor's funds and they are essentially a lender and they just get a fixed return. So you own the property. What about security? Now, you could give an investor the charge on the property if there's no other lending involved. Then when the property sells, that charge is released as the investor is paid back. Other ways you can offer security is to offer a personal guarantee, and that's pretty much how it's done. Next up, do I have to flip and sell the property, or can I keep the property? Well, yes and no. It depends on how the deal has been structured. As a quick example, if you've purchased a property and you've put some of your own money in and you have used maybe a bridging loan to help you purchase the property, but you didn't quite have the funds to refurb the property. So you go and find an investor and you use the investor's money to pay for the refurb. Now, when you finish the property refurb and everything's done, and the property is then revalued at the higher price because you've added that value, the refinance may well pull out enough money to pay down the bridging loan, pay back your investor and all their agreed fixed return, whatever you agreed with them, and then you're left with the property. So it all depends on the structure of the deal and finding the right investor to plug into that opportunity. Next up, what if the property doesn't sell for as much as you hoped? This is quite a common question that I find people ask. Now, if a property sells for less than you assumed, then you may have a shortfall. You may not have as much profit as you thought you were gonna have. However, you're going to be in charge of accepting the offers and making that decision to accept a lower offer or holding out for a higher offer. So to invest and use investor funds, the deal needs to be amazing to start with. When analysing any property deal, you never just work things out on a best case scenario. You have things like contingencies in place for extra costs and also maybe selling at a slightly lower level just in case. So you would have presented these scenarios in the pitch deck, as we mentioned earlier. The best case scenario, the worst case scenario, and somewhere in the middle. So the investor is fully aware before coming on board. But remember, you've agreed to lend X amount of money and give that investor a fixed return. Now, the likelihood is that you end up with less in your pocket. That's what happens. Always remember that you're the last person to get paid. So if anyone's going to take a hit, it's going to be you. Any lenders that you have, i.e. your investors that you've lent money from, they get paid back first. So they get paid out. And if there's less profit in the deal, then you're going to get less money in your pocket at the end of the day. Next question. How can a complete newbie start with zero experience? Well, we did touch upon this. But if you've got no experience of doing a refurb project on a property or investing and working with contractors, etc., then you'll have to be open about that very thing. You've got to be honest. You've got to be transparent. But you've got to then focus on your passion and your growing knowledge and focus on the fact that you're learning and maybe being mentored by somebody else with experience. You could ask somebody doing a refurb in your local area if you could shadow them or pick their brains. You know, I've had mentees do this together. So one can learn from another. In our property Basecamp community, they buddy up and one will look over the other person's shoulder and then ask questions. All right, so how do you do that? Okay, so what you did, right, now I get what you do it. So yeah, you can do that as well. It's a great way of seeing how things are done, how a refurb is project managed, and how it all comes together. And, you know, the problems and you know, the fighting fires and spinning plates and all the skills that come with project management, as I'm sure anybody listening to this that's done it, you know, it's a skill that you learn. And it is sometimes a baptism of fire. And remember, for property education without the high ticket prices, go and visit psnpropertyblog.com. That's it for this episode. I'll say that again. That's it for this episode of the Property Side Hustle podcast. And remember, with the right strategies and focus, anyone can achieve their property dreams. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and take it easy.